you felt the need for a mentor and you looked for one, or how did you find it, or what was the situation like in your life when you came across one, and how that difference in your work, in your career, in your schedule, how that changed, and what improved on it. So tell me first what was happening, what were you doing, what did you want, how did you find your mentor, and then what happened afterwards. So we'll start.
Definitely. Well, for me, my mentorship began while I was still in college. I was finishing up my degree. I was the last quarter of school at Savannah College of Art and Design. And one of the benefits of going to a school like that, definitely not the cost, but is the opportunities that are available to the students, and not necessarily that they're handed to you, but that they're there if you show initiative to the professors and to your peers and to the administration, and you show that you can handle the workload, and you can, that you're not going to be one of those artists that isn't able to speak about the work and actually figure out a way to connect to others with it as well. So anyway, I was in that last quarter, and I just began, and I was looking for work after I graduated. I knew, okay, I'm going to graduate and kind of have to make some money. I got to pay some bills here. So spoke to some professors and was told about a few jobs, and I picked up some work here and there. But it was one of my professors is a great guy, Rich Gear, who's also an artist. He lived in Atlanta for a while. He actually just moved over to Texas, I think at Texas A&M, and now he's running their whole print department, which is excellent for him. But he came to me and said, hey, a guy I know, Scott Ingram, is looking for an apprentice, or a studio apprentice for the Museum of Contemporary Art's studio apprentice program, or the working artist program. And he said, I think you would be a great candidate. And I think that's because, we became friends. I worked with him, I've taken many classes with him, had many discussions. He kind of figured out, does he want to work hard? How is he going to get along with this person? And, so it's not always going to be perfect. The right mentor doesn't come along all the time. But in this case, it happened to work out for me. And I began working with Scott through the Museum of Contemporary Art. Worked with him for about 6 months leading up to his show, which was in July, on July 11th. Blue Collar Modernism. Excellent show. And everything about that experience was good for me because it wasn't an area of art that I was familiar with or even really that interested in at the beginning of it. And I think, for me, it's really important to maybe not, if you're into hyperrealism, maybe it's not so good that you apprentice or be mentored by somebody who's an incredible hyperrealistic painter. You might want to go and be mentored by somebody who's working in abstract sculpture or foundry work, or something outside of the norm, which for me it really was. The relationship can be beneficial from both sides, in that I brought some digital training to the table as well as my formal printmaking training, where it kind of filled a need for my mentor Scott, who was working in and continues to work with a lot of architecture and modern design and construction materials, and just a totally different realm. And it really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things about myself as an artist, about other artists that I know, that I was kind of blind to before, or maybe not blind to, but didn't really want to see or didn't devote enough energy to even care about. But the relationship was just ultimately rewarding because it was different, and it was difficult at first, and it was challenging to me. And it challenged me in that I didn't know if the work was good at first. I was like, okay, this work seems simple. Let me not judge it so quickly. My mentor's work. And over time, I grew to appreciate the incredible aspects of discovery in what it takes to have these original ideas about construction, about things that are taken for granted that we see every day, and modern design that's just foreign to me. So now I feel much more enriched in that aspect, but I would never, ever want to stop. I would always want to, even if it's not a mentor-apprentice relationship, keep the network with other people that are doing things totally outside of your realm. Obviously, in the realm of artwork, that's great. But if it might be mentoring, if it might be art and marketing, if it might be, industrial design, there's so many aspects that are, I don't feel like you could ever run out of things to enrich yourself with in the arts.
Cool. Mike, go for it.
Okay.
Take us back.
I got a lot of years to think back on, so this took me a little while.
Fresh in my memory, so.
Yeah. And mentoring is a much more common thing these days than it was, even 10 years ago. I mean, you didn't hear a lot about that, or people being willing to do that. They were just they didn't have the title anyhow. You might have some relationships where somebody's kind of put their arm around you and kind of keeping an eye out for you. So I was thinking back, I don't recall ever having specifically a mentor. And I've been through several careers. I've reinvented myself to a certain degree several times. I started in banking, spent 5 years in banking out of college, and I don't know if I was fortunate or misfortunate. I worked at a savings and loan right when the savings and loan crisis came about, which made things a little uncomfortable, although fortunately the company I worked for was in good shape. The reputation of the savings and loans was horrendous. But it worked out good because it provided the trigger for me to go back to grad school. And so I went back and got my business degree. And so that was one career change. And then I decided I needed to live in Atlanta. So I grew up in Michigan, and the day after grad school, I was in a truck moving south to Atlanta because I knew I wanted to be down here, and the Olympics were coming. It was an exciting place to be. So I came down here and thought I was going to be a management consultant, and interviewed around a couple of times, and by chance got hooked up with Coca-Cola, and 11 years later I was ready to change my career again. So I've reinvented myself several times. I guess what really sticks in my mind is I've had mentors without the title that were both, I guess, the source. I had some really good bosses and I had some really bad bosses. And I probably learned as much from the bad bosses about what I don't want to do and the way I don't want to. So, again, it does not need to be anything formal. You never need to have the word mentor-mentee enter the relationship. But you're always interacting with people. And if you're not, then you should find some ways to get out there and interact with people, because you are going to learn one way or the other. And sometimes it's nice when it's not a formal thing, because then there's really no commitment, but you can keep your eyes open and learn some things. But yeah, I think for me, I just, the ones that stick in my mind are really the horrendous bosses. You're like, wow, that's just wrong. You don't want to treat people like that. And that's really stuck with me and been very important in my development and the way that I've managed the people that I've worked with, and the relationships inside and out of business that I've been involved with. And so I'm thankful for those, even though they're a little uncomfortable sometimes.
So let me follow up, and before we get to Flavor Dave, what moment sparked the idea for you to decide to be a coach, business coach? What's the reason?
Well, I had basically been doing some kind of coaching or oversight or working with clients and helping them take their business to the next level, I guess is the simplest way to say that. Either franchisees in the Wendy's system when I was at Coke, or I worked for several different companies in Savannah, and so I was always seeing, I'd get there and things would be a mess. They just everyone was frustrated. The owner was spending all their time behind a desk paying bills when they should be out driving the business and really pursuing what they got into business for. So it was always craziness, and I'd like to say, in fact, it's probably on my LinkedIn profile somewhere, that I like to bring order from chaos, and that's what I enjoy. I'm a problem solver, so I'd get in there, it'd be a mess. I'd come in and get it organized, and then sooner or later things would settle down, and then I'd get bored. It's like, oh, what, I need a challenge. I need something new to do. Well, I would, then either go myself go find something, or, just say this business owner is not taking it far enough, or not appreciative of what I've had to bring to the table. So I'd move on to the next one. Well, after 6 of those in Savannah, I thought to myself, this is crazy. I need to have my own business. And at that point, I didn't know what business it would be. So when I moved back to Atlanta, because I knew there were more opportunities here, and I missed Atlanta, I got back here and I thought, okay, I'm just going to go back to the corporate world and go interview and all that. And that lasted about a month and a half. And I said, there's no way I'm doing that anymore. And then it hit me. It's like, why not do what you love to do? You can you can have your own business. And so I don't remember the moment, but that hit me. But I did have an epiphany as far as the way that I wanted to teach. I'm actually in the process of getting it all out of my head, the process that I go through, and captured so that I can put it out there as I'm developing it in modules so that it's digestible. People can take it as they need it. It can be face-to-face, it can be online, whatever. So that's kind of, that epiphany came. It's like, hey, I can share what I've learned via being a coach. That's what I like to do. I know it can be helpful. So I'm about halfway where I want to be with having that ready to publish and all that, but it's coming.
Cool.
We'll see.
All right.
Stay tuned.
We'll come back with some more Flavor Day.
My first mentor, like Mike said, at the time that this was happening, the word mentor wasn't a household term or wasn't a buzzword at that time. But my personal mentor was a personal friend of mine. I was still in art school in a graphic design program in East Carolina, and at that time, I thought I wanted to get out, get a good job, work in a design firm or an ad agency, and with a desk with my own little cubicle and a plan on the desk and everything like that. And my friend was an MBA graduate, and her background is finance, but she's not an artist and far from an artist, but just constantly asking her, and at that time, going through art school, you hit walls of frustration at time, and just asking her, what should I do? What course of action should I take? And when I get out of school, what should I do? So our relationship continued after I graduated, and basically, long story short, when I graduated, moved here to Atlanta because, again, I saw the opportunities here in Atlanta also, and she had moved to Atlanta before I did, and I got into the art department of a company and sitting in a cubicle and doing artwork, and I realized quickly that wasn't for me. I hated that type of environment. It was too structured for me, and for some of you who may know, just being an Army officer, you would say, well, that's too structured. Well, it was just hitting those walls of frustration, not being as creative as I would like to have been. And so a lot of times I would just consult her, well, what do I do in this situation? How do I deal with the office politics? I just want to create art. I don't know how to create art and also, deal with the office politics. I'm the type of person, I get along with anybody and everybody, but I would see the backhandedness and people, covering their rear ends because they didn't do something, they put it off in someone else's lap. I just hated that type of environment. So she kind of guided me and tried to steer me in the right direction in those types of situations. But, eventually I got out of those environments, and I'll never go back. I don't care what it takes. I'll never go back to that type of environment. That's just not for me. And so even to this day, I still, every now and then, if I have a question or anything about business or finance, I'll still call her up or shoot her a text message or an email and get that advice. On the flip side, as a former Army officer, I've counseled younger soldiers, and when you're anytime you're in the military, you always have someone above you and below you. So you're being mentored by older officers, and at the same time, as a captain, I mentored a lot of younger soldiers. We call it counseling. in the Army, but it's the same thing. You just try to be there for that person, steer them in the right direction as far as their career and possibly their personal life sometimes. And a lot of times you don't have all the answers, but you need to be able